everyone, welcome to the Let's Talk Student Ministry podcast. My name is Noah Bello. I am the student pastor of Tesh Baptist Church in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana.
And I'm Nikki Lee, the youth leader here.
And today I'm actually sponsoring my school. Well, I'm not sponsoring, I'm wearing their shirt, New Orleans Baptist Seminary. And as you know, we have to fuel our caffeine addictions. Brought to you by CC's Coffee House, hashtag not sponsored.
And me, I am of no brand.
Well, she is of a brand, but she poured the brand into the mug so that y'all don't know about it. So, Nikki, how did you feel about this past week of ministry?
I think this past week was really good. And I don't just say that because I say that most weeks. Because last week was good, but still stressful just because we were all catching up. But I think this week felt cohesive. There's a good word.
Yeah.
We were very cohesive in our work this week.
Yeah, I'm at a place now where I'm finally finishing my youth lessons in advance and actually having like my next lessons planned ahead. So like on Tuesday, I had my Wednesday night lesson completely planned out, and then I just started on next Wednesdays, like that night. And then on Wednesday morning, I was actually able to send you guys the outline of the next Wednesday night lesson so that y'all can start thinking in advance about what it's going to be like. So I really feel like we've been firing on all cylinders this past week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has been great.
Yeah, I think the other ministries outside of the youth that we do were also firing on all cylinders. And so it just felt really good. It felt like, knock on wood wherever there is some, it felt like an easy...
That's not wood.
No, I think it's...
There we go, that's the wood part.
It felt like an easy week of ministry.
Oh, I never like to use the word easy. But simple. I will say that I think that stepping out of other areas in order to focus on youth and young adults it's already started to pay off. Like CR this week was a breeze for me. There's usually a bit of stress associated with it because I had to plan everything but also be ready for CR. But this time, the person that's taking over as the new leader just needed a list of everything that I do to get ready, and so I sent it to them, and then that was it. Good enough, Yeah. Another thing that I did this week, because of my car situation, Emily and I have been sharing a car, and so last night I was unable to go to come to the church for young adults, and I also wasn't able to attend the associational meeting that happened, which actually allowed me to do a lot of planning. In fact, just not this week, not even yesterday, but like throughout the week. And I'd like to say that I finally have all the way up till May of next year planned out as far as series are concerned.
That's insane.
I guess so.
I have like this week planned out as far as.
Yeah, I mean we can get into it later, but I've learned to compartmentalize in my mind what kind of planning I need to do and what level of planning I need, and so I have the rest of 2026 outlined and a skeleton of it, and I'm actually trying to organize a meeting coming up to start some plans with that. But then I have about the first half of 2026 just lessons alone planned out based on specifically what verses we're going to do and what direction I think the lessons should take the group. And I haven't actually studied yet for them. As far as the deep spending hours on research and everything and spending a lot of time meticulously planning stuff, I usually do that within a month or two of it happening, depending on what it is, Yeah,
I mean, to your point, I guess when I first hear you say, I have everything done through May, I think all of it. But I am the same way. I already know what the theme of VBS is, what worked last year, what do we need to improve up this year. And so, we have the Christmas play, which is a couple months away. I mean, I still I have the bare bones of most of the ministries that I work in planned out, just so that I don't wait until the day before, because I have a bad habit of that.
That actually reminds me that we need to talk pretty soon us to about VBS and how we can start preparing in advance. But whenever in seminary, the first semester that I did was in a class. I had a class just called Pastoral Ministry, and one of the units talked about planning, and it had said that you need to. It's recommended to try to have at least an idea of what messages you want to preach for the next 6 months in ministry. And the reason is because you want to be able to communicate with the rest of your ministries. If you're the senior pastor, the rest of your ministries and the rest of your leadership, like what we're going to be like, what direction we're going to be shepherding the flock in for the foreseeable future, so that everybody can get ideas of like, okay, well, I don't want to teach something that might, I don't want to say conflict because it's all coming from the same source, but I don't want to teach them about conduct and about like how hard sin is if he's going to be preaching about the freedom from Christ, I want to kind of keep in theme and everything. So
well, that also fits with what we'll talk about a little later, is how do you get to a goal or an outcome if you don't know what the pavement looks like to get there.
I think this past Wednesday night was a good example of that.
Yeah, I have always loved how we've done Wednesday nights. I love how it's always come together. You and I know each other really well, so that's a thing, right? So I thought it was funny last Wednesday when Eli was like,
"Did y'all talk about this before?
Y'all like do this before?" And you were like, novel idea. It's almost like we're intentional, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I tried to be sarcastic. I tried to be sarcastic and be all like, "No, we actually don't speak at all." But it
was funny because in the video that we had, the podcast that we recorded previous to that Wednesday, the Friday before, we made a joke about like it's almost like we're intentional. And then Eli asked that question on Wednesday, and I thought, oh my goodness, this theme keeps coming around. And so, but the truth is yes, we're intentional. We kind of know theme, but how they come together is sometimes feels a bit more ethereal than that. Like it's fun to see God's hand, but this week was different for me in that I actually, believe it or not, enjoyed how it, like normally I like to teach them something kind of not eclectic, but outside of let's talk about mental health and Jesus and let's talk, but it just felt different, but it felt really good.
I usually try to have a structure, because what I'll do is I'll have my series planned out, and for each series I have a document that has the week that we're going to be teaching something and the verse and then a working title for that. And I try to keep the titles are all in theme to kind of give people just an idea just from reading it to know this is probably what it's going to be about. And that's kind of a bit bigger picture. And then as we get more narrow, if we're on the series, I try to have the document completely finished, and then I can provide it to you and our worship team so they can know which songs to get ready for. But this one specifically, we're in a series that is so mentally taxing for me to study and to figure out how do I teach it in such a concise way that I feel like having you help by starting off by setting the stage for what we're going to talk about is going to make it a lot easier. Because like what I do like on the molecular is that whenever the week comes around,
good word.
On the week comes around, at this point I already have the songs that the girls want to do. I already have the lesson pretty much finished. Really, I'm just waiting for you to finish. Shoot, let's talk about it so I can know what to put.
And then I never tell you what it's. You'll be like, "What's it going to be on?" And
I'll just watch it. Just watch the video.
I mean, I'll tell you what you'll be like. What is it on? I'll be like this. But yeah.
That's why I mentioned earlier that I know your strengths and weaknesses, and so if you're going to produce a great video and then edit it perfectly, but then not tell me what it's about, I'll just watch the video and then be okay with that. But anyways, I try to have like a document that has a rough schedule of the night itself. In the order that we're going to do stuff, so that all the leaders involved can actually be aware of what's going to happen and be able to set the stage for that. And I feel like all these different levels of communication has really helped us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you spearhead that. One of the things I'm good at, if you sit me around a table like this, is communicating with everyone and saying, like, this is what we need, and seeing all of this. But if you ask me to be the one to spearhead organization, unless it is like it's a client or something that I do for work, it's not a strong suit of mine. I actually like that we had that conversation because when so for the record, so y'all aren't only in half the conversation. Right before we started filming, we were talking about we're going to meet up somewhere tonight with a group, and he's sharing a car, like he said, and his fiance said, well, why don't you just ride with Nikki? And you can't sit in the passenger seat of my car. It is loaded down with stuff. And
the messiest car I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, like it's a running joke. And so, but he was like, he made the statement that like, I know where your strong suits are and I know where your weaknesses are. And so like, I don't fault you for those. I just take them for what they are. And honestly, it was one of the first times like you got it, like someone got it. And I was like, thank you. Like that, because so many times when we do this to people, I do it sometimes, is we judge a whole person by like one messy piece, which I thought was a really good contrast, and like it's indicative of how we see these kids. So anyway, we're both such deep thinkers.
I guess to give a little bit better context, I said I didn't want to ride with her because her car is so messy, she's not going to be able to clean it out. Emily says, well, you could just clean it out for her. And then I said, well, A, this is going to take me all day. And B, there's probably some kind of like latent bacteria in there that I'm going to catch and everything, which then led me to telling her.
And I can't defend that. Like, there may be.
Because, like, here's the thing. And maybe one day we can have a talk about understanding leadership and delegating tasks and everything. But, in college, I'm a business major. Well, I'm technically general studies, but I took all the classes for business major. It's a whole thing. And it's funny because, at least at the college I went to, I did not have a single class on taxes or on business accounting. I talked about financial accounting on a large scale and corporations and LLCs, but they didn't talk about small business. They didn't talk about the leadership strategies, but we did talk about communication a lot. And I liked that. And one thing, I think it was for like human resources management or something of all classes, we had to learn about recognizing people's strengths and weaknesses, and then just utilizing them for their strengths and forgiving them for their weaknesses. And so Nikki's strengths are in, being able to minister to the girls, being able to be understanding on just about every level, being able to organize thoughts and lessons and everything, and offering really good ideas to the table. She's good with design. She's good with, basically she's a jack of all trades, or I guess a Jane of all trades.
Master of none, no.
Except for one area, and that is physical organization. I ask her to take roll on Sundays and she always leaves the roll call behind. But I've recognized that, and so my personal philosophy is that if she's going to do an amazing job teaching the girls and helping them find a transformative relationship with Christ, then I can pick up a piece of paper.
And I appreciate that. And to likewise, because I don't think it's, I think it's fair to say this is a really good time to say this is why we work so well in ministry, is because while I always feel like I'm really good at like big picture and hitting these kids on an emotional level, which you are as well, I think we're good. I can be good at physically organizing something, but one of the things that I've always really admired about how you teach these kids is how you teach them in ways that we don't even teach large congregations from the pulpit, and that is the in-depth, what do these things mean? What do you really need to know? Yeah. Because sometimes we tell people, I've been listening to sermons for a really long time, right? Been a Christian a long time. And I always get the overview and I'm like, okay, so I'm more complicated and more of a deep thinker like you are. I need to know more. Like, you can't give me a rule or a guideline and my brain goes, well, that doesn't fit, and not teach me about it. But you teach these kids about that. So why I thought Wednesday worked is because while I'm a good summarizer, not that you are not, right? Again, we're not saying that about either person, but like I'm really good at summarizing, but you are really good at breaking those things down to a digestible level. And so, yeah.
Yeah, this lesson specifically drove me crazy. I was actually, but just so that I don't forget, I actually pulled out, this is what my lesson planning looks like, specifically my series planning. So we have the title, short synopsis of the series, the weeks that are involved with the series, like the dates. We have the verses we're going to use and the titles at the end. And I usually send this to my leaders, and I don't know if they ever look at it at all, but I'm hoping that they do.
They do.
And then we have our youth night service order that I print out for my youth and my adult leaders here. And so it's just a regular schedule for what we do. And yeah, what I was saying was that this lesson was really tough for me, because the Sermon on the Mount is such a complicated passage, because Jesus is a master teacher.
It was like he was trying to cram all of this, like, here's this one last thing, I want you to know all these things before you're on your own, kids.
I know, and so I had to find ways to no, okay, so then because I could have gone so deep with everything, and so how do I, what stuff do I brush past and what stuff do I go deep into? I felt it was necessary to go deep into the first part, because the first part, the conversation about divorce, I feel like is more misunderstood than the rest of them. Don't make a promise you can't keep. I mean, that is a lot deeper than you think, but it's also, it also kind of lines up with everything else as well. Love your enemies, what's the other one?
Revenge.
Revenge. Don't take revenge. Yeah.
That was the one I forgot the other night.
Go the second well, yeah. Yeah, but the thing about divorce was that one was a big struggle, because you got to consider when you're reading the Sermon on the Mount that this is not supposed to be just Jesus being oh, by the way, all these things.
Don't get married. Don't get divorced.
Don't get divorced. Don't do this and that. This is actually Jesus having to establish foundational teaching for the new covenant people of God, because Jesus is the fulfillment of the old covenant people. Two, in that Jesus is the fulfillment. The Sermon on the Mount is the fulfillment of the law of Moses, as it's a commentary on chapter 5 itself is a commentary on the Ten Commandments, and then the rest of it is actually breaking down and basically summarizing Leviticus to show what God's true heart and intention for that is. And on top of all that, he's also commenting on the false teachings of the people at the time and correcting all that all into one thing. And to wrap that all into one bow, he's using that to teach people how to be righteous and how to be the true people of the kingdom of God. And so I have to find a way to basically convey the message that Jesus wanted to convey to his people at the time.
You know what, to add to your point, the other thing that I don't know if people really think about is that when Jesus already knew what came next. What came 100 years down the road becomes 1,000 years down the road. And so if we're to believe that the Bible is the inspired word of God and that it is the truth, it is our sword, then we have to think that when Jesus was teaching the Sermon on the Mount, he knew that it would get into our hands today, and those things had to be relevant to today, and Jesus would have known how culture would have changed. And so it's why I like how you teach. That's one of the reasons why I like how you teach, is you go this is what was said, but here's all the research that I've done that shows this is what it meant.
Yeah.
And so we forget about that. We forget that Jesus knew what would be, so he couldn't just teach these guys today for the next 20 years of their life.
Do you remember what I said at the beginning of the lesson about false teaching, and about how Jesus' Sermon on the Mount is actually really applicable to us right now? Basically, one of the reasons why the Sermon on the Mount was necessary, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the many reasons is that the teachings of the people, of the rabbis at the time, was drenched in cultural preconceptions and bad exegesis, which exegesis is the process of finding the plain meaning of the text. And so the rabbi, for instance, it was also said, whoever divorces his wife must give her a written notice of divorce. Well, that's actually a comment on Deuteronomy 24:1, which if I run to that real quick, Deuteronomy 24:1.
This reminds me of Bible drills as a kid.
Deuteronomy 24:1. If a man marries a woman, but she becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, he may write her a divorce certificate, hand it to her, and send her away from his house. So what was very common practice back then is that the rabbis would teach that the finding something indecent about her, which originally was intended to refer to adultery, and especially because the whole indecency thing comes from the way that it's used in the Bible is referring to indecent exposure to people that don't need to see what they need to see, like the sin of Noah from the book of Genesis. When he's naked, it says that he was indecently exposed, and his son showed him to the people. That's actually the same terminology. It's also the word that they used to describe the Israelites when they exposed themselves to other religions. And so if you were actually trying to find the true meaning of it back in the day, then you'd know that this is talking about unfaithfulness in a relationship. But what the rabbi would do, and it got even more, this was called the rabbinical tradition. The rabbinical tradition over time ended up morphing it into, if your spouse, well, first of all, they go very heavy on the gender specific terms, saying only men can divorce their wives.
Yeah.
And if your wife does anything you don't like,
she gone.
You can divorce her as long as you write a certificate of divorce.
Right.
And so people were literally like, they stopped valuing their relationships.
Right.
And they stopped valuing their marriage. They stopped valuing the covenant that they made with the people, with their wives. And I could argue that actually is very reflective of
today,
the way that they viewed God, because they were not valuing their covenant with God. And we can go into a whole thing later on in this series, in this podcast, about how your views on marriage actually affects your views on God, which is actually something we're going to talk about in January. It is biblical. But that right there, that whole thing I just gave you, is one of the reasons why Jesus had to preach it for what it really said, and one of the reasons it's so difficult to teach this stuff.
Well, I think it's you know what I love about Jesus, so many things, but one of the things I love about when I read Jesus talk is he almost tries to not just did you just drop the sleeve?
Yeah, I just dropped the sleeve.
One of the things I love when I read Jesus' words is that when you hear him, he almost is trying to rewind it. He teaches them how they got off track, and like, this is what it was supposed to, like, this is how y'all gotten off track. This is what it's meant to say. So it's not just like I'm teaching you something new, something opposed to what you've been doing your whole lives. I'm teaching you what was meant to be, and I love that. Right.
You know, another example of that is in verses 33 to 37 when Jesus talks about keeping your oath. That's also based on a passage in Deuteronomy that ended up being understood and taught by the people, that if you don't want to be bound to a promise or to a contract, then you should put the contract on something that's not as heavily and not as weighing as putting it on God or on your family, which was not at all what God was trying to convey. What he was conveying was that you must be true to your oath.
Right.
That's what he said. But because of language and hermeneutical reasons that I'm not going to get into, it was interpreted and taught in the rabbinical tradition that you can put, if you make a promise with somebody, you can put that on something physical that won't last, so you can get out of the promise if you have to.
Right.
Which that on top of the divorce thing kind of created this whole like mindset of unfaithfulness and not being accountable to what they have to do, which that was why we were able to turn that and then aim that towards the group. Which, if we want to spin this back to how we're planning our messages and everything, or how we plan our nights, is I had to ask myself, okay, so how does this all play into the concept of a kingdom culture? And I realized this was creating a culture among the people that didn't value and was not faithful to God or to their relationships or to their church. And that is the kind of culture that God wants us to be, is a culture that values and that is loyal to each other and that is loyal to God. So yeah,
I think too, when you sent the text message, that day, like asking, hey, can you make Let's Talk About It about XYZ? There's a lot covered in the scripture for the reason you've already said. And I went and I remember thinking about what that scripture was going to be and then actually like reading it. And these were my key takeaways. I think I even said like, well, what part do you want me to cover? This, or this? And then as I read it again, I almost immediately responded, oh, never mind. I got it. I know what I'm going to do. But the other thing that I thought, this hit me while I was doing it. I don't remember when we recorded it, but you said, I don't know how many times I need to tell these kids. It was about YC shirts when they could wear them. But this is what hit me when I read the scripture. We had already seen the parables, right? And so as I'm reading the scripture and I'm reading and I'm thinking about Jesus and what he was trying to say, I thought Jesus must have thought, how many times do I have to teach these lessons? Because you see them throughout the parables, and I'm like, and the disciples were with him the whole time. I mean, the apostles were with him the whole time. So he must have felt like that sometimes.
I mean, Jesus himself, there's a time whenever he says, oh, how long must I be with his unfaithful generation?
Right.
You know?
So, I don't know. That just kind of connected for me this week.
I guess to kind of give it like a bit of an insight on, like, whenever I'm writing a lesson, when I'm writing, even if I'm preaching to the whole church, when I'm writing a sermon, and keep in mind I have taken a sermon writing class at this point, but I still have my own words that I use for it to understand it better for myself, is that I call it, whenever I write a lesson, the first thing I do is I ask God to show me what verse that he wants the lesson to be built off of. And then whenever I find that, I have to find what I call the thread, which is there's like one through line that you can take that is true to what the verse is saying. Because here's the thing, there's one meaning and multiple applications. You should not get that mixed up. There's not multiple meanings, there's one meaning, multiple applications. Well, what application connects to the condition of the ministry or the church at the time, the context of the teachings, and that actually connects them all together into one thing. Because what I want to do is I want to be able to wrap up the lesson. I want to be able to teach a lesson that another person can go home and have a family member say, hey, what was church about? And then they can say, oh, it was about this, and say it in one word.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sermons that I go to, and I don't know how I'd be able to summarize it in a word. But I know for sure, at least I'm hoping, that the kids can go home and tell their mom, we learned about culture, or we learned about relationships.
Yeah.
We learned about faithfulness.
You also do a good job of making sure your outlines, like when you put them up here, they're like all R's, or they're just
alliteration.
You're just so you're good at that. You're good at making sure that you create something that sticks in the mind.
Yeah, the alliteration of it. And the hardest thing for me is what I call finding a sweet spot, which is, let's say I've already had the through line of what I want to talk about. I will continuously work on and pray over and study for a passage until not only do I know what I'm going to talk about, but also I'm confident that what I say would be something that I don't get bored listening to if I was in the thing. And so it's like, is this something I can actually be excited to talk about?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But the other thing is like, what would make you excited to listen to, and maybe me and few of the kids, it's not what would make the masses excited to listen to, because, you know, we're maybe theological nerds, but you still do it in a way where the rest of them understand it.
Well, I appreciate that.
I honestly have this idea that you will be this vision that you will probably be a professor one day at a seminary. Like, you are just so good at breaking down.
I can pass my classes. What are you talking about?
You will pass your classes.
I'm already behind on what makes sense.
But and not in a way of like those who can't do teach, but you are so good at what you do. I just don't know. I think it would be a shame for the next generation to not be taught how to write a sermon and deliver it the way you do.
Well, that I appreciate that. I don't really know how to respond to that.
He doesn't respond to compliments.
I don't respond to compliments well. But I will say that does remind me of what I did say. I don't remember if I covered this or not, but what we talked about at the beginning of the lesson was that when Jesus is facing a culture that, I did say it earlier, when Jesus is facing a culture that was taught wrong, it reminds me of today, of how many people are stuck on tradition that was either taught by their families, their churches, or their social media platforms, or they just don't know how to read their Bible properly. People have a bad habit of reading a passage from the lens of 2025, or sticking to one translation and thinking that that's the one true translation. And I'm not going to say just the King James Version people are like that. People will do that for the New International, people do that for the ESV. And that's led to a lot of misunderstanding. I know people that do study the Bible properly and will still hold different views. Not like opposing from me, because like you can have a different opinion from me and still be right. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. I'm talking about studying the Bible and still believing something different from what the Bible says because of the way that they feel about something.
Oh, sure.
You know, or it's like, I understand that we need to be. I actually had a pastor tell me one time, I understand that we need to be actively evangelizing. I know that go and share the gospel and make disciples is an active thing, but our church just can't do that right now. To which the Bible makes it clear that if you are saved, you can do it, and you should be. And
the argument is, if you want your church to be able to get to a point to do it better, you need to go do it.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing with culture we talked about last week.
No, but I think, you know, what really makes me sad is I see people who come from a different faith or a different type of religion, and they believe the Word of God, they've given their life over to Jesus, but they still are either held in bondage by their family or they're held in bondage by just the old beliefs. Like, they know that this is true, they feel that this is what they're supposed to be, but some part of them, and I think it's a really good foothold that the devil makes, right, is that these things matter somehow to me and my family and my sentiments, so I'm afraid to let them go, versus just like leaving everything behind like the apostles did and just following Jesus the way that you know you should follow Jesus.
Well, part of denying yourself and taking up your cross is denying your own view.
Yeah.
And then just accepting the Bible for what it says. And that is something that I don't think anybody has ever perfectly done, you know?
No.
Every theologian and pastor that we study, even in seminary, if my professor is any good, he will always say something along the lines of, this guy did not get everything right, but a couple of his writings make some good points and some good thinking points, because they want us to know that, like, just because Augustine or Thomas Aquinas or like those big names from the past, just because they had a lot of good things to say doesn't mean that their perspective was 100% right.
Right.
You know? And I'm not going to get into I was about to list something out, but then I don't want to start a fight about doctrine.
I don't know that we would fight about doctrine. We actually had a really good discussion last week or the week before. No, it'll post today.
A long time ago.
Every week feels like a long time ago. But
I mean, like, I don't want to say something that will lead that like, I mean, I know that we're not big enough for that now, but what if years down the line somebody like watches this and comments like, oh, this and that really did. I'm not holding an opinion, guys. I'm just
if I'm
sharing
still around, I'll be happy to be the one that fights back.
Oh, I can comment back. I don't care. Okay, sorry about that. We had to cut real quick.
Well, they don't know we're cutting.
Well, they might have noticed it because my coffee cup's gone. You gotta pay attention. You gotta pay attention to the differences of continuity, Nikki. You know. Anyways, yeah. So I want to talk now about I love the conversation we were having, but I feel like we kind of got a little off track.
Which we do
that a lot. You know, I want to talk about how we plan for every other aspect of Wednesday night, because we have, you know, I produce the schedule and the lesson, and I have the series and everything put together. And then you will do the talk, and then we'll help figure out a good vibe for that. But I want to talk about the worship team. I want to talk about media and everything else, and any other aspect that might come with that. So, you know, you work with the worship team more now, so you can take that. So,
well, I think, and because we want to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the actual ministry things that we do in ministry. You know, with the worship team, I've always been impressed with the worship team. They kind of, with them and you know, kind of like just came about. And it's wonderful, and they love to sing and worship. But one of the things that I thought was really important is that we start to put a little bit more structure. And what they would do is they would just pick whatever key is on the radio, some because they didn't have the ability to print out the other tabs, and some just because I don't know that it really registered that you should change a key if you don't sound great in it.
I don't think they knew what a key was.
Yeah. The only one, Malachi, are like savant with all instruments.
The kid's a genius.
He is. But all of our kids are kind of self-taught. I mean, you have Hannah who plays the keyboard and sings. She's self-taught. You've got Malachi who plays everything now, self-taught. I mean, he is in band, but, you know.
Hunter,
self-taught. Yeah. And then all of our cajon players and singers. So one of the things we first focused on when I started to get more involved is we're not just getting up here to bang pots and pans together. You'll have to sound cohesive. And they didn't always know. They're so young, they've never been in an actual band. They didn't realize that they weren't cohesive. And so we've worked on that. We've worked on finding the right key for them for songs. But the big thing this week was we always sing, or we typically, so I won't say always, but we typically sing, you know, those mellow songs. Most contemporary worship songs are very, you know, mellow now. But we wanted to do some upbeat songs. And so when they started singing it, it's called Grave Clothes, right?
Yeah, the first time they did it.
I had never heard it, but other than the beat, like the
Josiah Queen, yeah.
And when I heard them, I was like, why are we going so slow? And why do y'all sound like this is like Jesus is awakening? He's bringing you, he made new, and they, you know.
That was actually relatively recent. I remember when I talked to them about it, there was like, oh, because this person didn't set their tempo and this and that, and I realized that like they actually don't understand how to set a tempo.
Yeah.
Because they think that you have to rely on the guitarist to start the tempo, and the drummer and the piano has to be obedient to that or something, when it's like not necessarily. They all have to be on the same mind.
Right.
You know?
And if the person you're leading gets off tempo, everyone else should stay on the correct tempo, not follow, which tends to happen. But that's last Sunday. I finally got them, you know, like our singers. I don't know who taught our singers that you should just like, because when I see them out and about, and I was like, be a Disney princess, because one of our singers, man, she has got a voice, and when she is being Rapunzel, you know, she's fantastic, and I wanted her to feel like you can do that when you worship. And so I felt by the end of the practice, we got there. It was upbeat. We put another upbeat song with it, and we even sang that song more upbeat than we normally do. And then Wednesday night came, and they slowed it all down.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought Wednesday night sounded great.
It did. No. It sounded great, but I would have thought that they would have they just toned it down a notch, which is fine. They did wonderful. I'm not trying to be overly critical here. It is just about, if we're talking about the nuts and bolts, it's slowly teaching them what does it look like to worship. Like when you go to a worship concert, are they like, I'm gonna in my grave clothes? No. I'm
letting go, I'm leaving my grave clothes.
You're a good, good father. It's who you are. No, like, yeah. And so, but yeah, they sound amazing, but sound is not what we're aiming for. I mean, you don't want to sound like you're herding a bunch of wet cats, but you also want to be able to feel what you're singing. And so I'm working with them on that. At one point, Abby was halfway through the first song, and she looked up at me, and the whole time I'm going, because she won't look at me. And I'm like, and so she took her arms like this and went. And I was like, no, now you look more military. I'm like, all right.
It's a start, you know?
So yeah, so that's where we are with our music. They sound wonderful. They're very talented kids. I just want to get them to a place where they feel like when they come up here, they are worshiping. They're not just leading.
I think, I don't know, I'm trying to think about what to say. I don't know why I had this doesn't happen often. Anyways. I thought that it sounded really good though. And I'm really impressed with the girls and the heart of worship. I remember what I was going to say is that you're right. It's not just worship is more than a song. You know, like that song that we do. I I've had to remind them many times that they are worship leaders.
Yeah.
And when you are leading, the people that are following you are only going to rise to the level that you set for yourself. Okay. That's why I say all the time, if I want them to be, if I want the youth group to be a certain type of way, I need to actually have that aspect within me, or at least within my leadership. And so if you want the youth ministry to be excited about worship, you need to be excited about worship, because you are setting the tempo, right? And I mean, the Holy Spirit can do wonders, but
I mean, absolutely. But I mean, we can't always be the ones who are like going up and down the aisles, like, you know, they need to be the ones that get these kids pumped. That's what they want to. If this is what they want to do, especially, you know, we've got a few people in our band who want to be worship leaders one day and work in ministry. Then this is a really good platform to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I was thinking of is, you know, we could talk about the worship team for what they do wrong now, but I also want to think about how much we have improved since we started.
Sure.
And the story of the worship team, like everything else.
Is that how it came across? I wasn't just trying to say that what they do wrong.
Oh, no.
We were talking about specifically this Wednesday.
Yeah. But I'm thinking about the story of the worship team and how that actually coincides with the story of the ministry. And I think that actually helps us to kind of talk about how planning and how the background of building these things kind of works. And here's what I mean. I always dreamed about having a worship team. But when I started here, there was no heart for worship at all. After YEC, Hunter comes up to me and says, I'm going to learn the drums because one day I want to start a worship band. And I was like, okay, bud. And then nothing really changes except that during the year after that, Adeline started helping me with singing, and a couple other students started helping me with singing, and that got really exciting. I ended up teaching Malachi how to play guitar, which then he came back like a year later with this amazing guitar ability, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. And then at that last YEC, I asked the longest running students that we had. I got them together, all the originals I could find, and I said, okay, what do you want to see in next year? And they said organized leadership, which we set up, and they said we want a real worship team, like a band. Some of them said a new room, so here you go.
So we've given them everything they've asked for.
I don't remember if there's anything else. I'm going to ask them the same thing this year, though, at YEC, because that was a good tradition that we started.
It's also a very different group. The people we call OG, literally their first real trip with us was YEC.
Yeah. We met like the week after YEC. I think it's the week after YEC, wasn't it, to start practicing? And we had a lot of work to do. That was actually how Emily introduced herself to the youth group, because she wanted to come and watch the practice. Because like I'd asked her, I was like, because we had been dating for about a month at that point. She had never really met the group. She came like one Wednesday but sat quietly in the back. But then I was like, you gotta come and like meet the girls and meet everybody.
Well, and that's just when, I mean, you were still playing guitar, I was still playing piano, we had a bunch of singers, Malachi also was like learning the guitar, and so we were really the band, they were just the voices, and it took Hannah all of about...
All year?
No, I mean, it took her a couple of months, and she was like, I'm gonna play, and I was like, okay.
Oh, I thought that's where, okay. And yeah, it's, over this year, we watched them develop to really figure out like the identity we want our worship team to have. We have a very clear goal and a vision that we're building up towards. We have prospects for leadership and new ways that we're thinking of how to design it. And now they're actually involved in helping us plan our Wednesday nights. And they kind of, if we need to on an emergency, we'll have them, they can even kind of work on their own without us sometimes. And so in itself, I'm very pleased with the fact that we were able to kind of just get there over time and with patience. And I think the way that kind of ties in with everything else is that whenever it comes to building like main programs, like parts of this ministry and other stuff, I've always felt that the best thing that you need to do is you just start, even if you don't feel like you're good enough, or even if you feel like you don't have what you need. But if you start with a vision and with an identity of what you want to be, that sets you apart from everybody else, and then you just have the goal of, I'm not saying this is all you need, but if this is what you start with, a vision and with a goal of I'm going to continue changing this, not the vision,
Right.
but the method. I'm going to continue changing the method until something works. Staying within biblical boundaries, obviously. I don't want to like do any incantations to cause some spirit to come in and whatever.
Noah and I are like dead chickens every Wednesday. Like,
Right.
please let this be a good night. I'm just kidding.
But if you have this willingness to adjust, to change, and to really work with things, then you can watch it grow into the thing. And you have to be patient. You know, it took us a couple of years to get where we are here. As I said, like this worship thing started out as an idea, and it only slowly developed.
Well, I think we've talked about it a little bit in some other episodes where in the beginning it was you and a guitar and a voice. And then it was, you know, one of our girls, Adeline. She would come up and sing when she was here on Wednesday nights. And worship looked very different. And to the point of what we really, I think, what we're trying to convey or what we want to convey in this particular episode is you have to have vision. You have to have some bones. But you also have to have, well, what do you want it, what's the effect that this will have on the ones who are participating and on the ones who are observing? And so I know for like worship, I want the worship team to do two things. I want them to know what it feels like to authentically get up here and worship. Which is why, you know, I know for me, I've done some hard things with these kids, like when they're going through heartache, making them, or not making, but pushing them to keep going in worship either way, and to kind of let loose and be like worship. And then for this side, I want these kids, because most of our kids are not, maybe 60-40, 60% of them aren't really like raise your hand worship kids. Like they're just not those kids. This isn't their kind of music. This isn't, and so
and that's not exactly a culture we have yet over here of raising hands in worship.
Right. And so like, but they do a good, even the back row boys who are great this week, they sing, I hear them. And so we want whatever this youth group, this worship team to do, we want those kids to also be affected by what they're doing. That's important. Vision is important, bones are important, and what are you trying to create because of that? What tool you use, to your point, it's like building a piece of furniture. You might change out the wrench you use 5 times.
Yeah.
But
you know, I'm glad you said that, because this is actually I can actually share with you guys the structure that I use whenever I'm building stuff, right? I use this for our young adults ministry. I'm using this currently for our media program, and for our youth snack sales program. I've been using it for our worship team. Is the first thing I do is I establish my mission, which is what you said, the effect that you want to have. With the worship team, my mission was to have a worship team that invokes a spirit of worship in the room, that sets the atmosphere, and that really teaches the Bible through music. My vision was it being a student-led worship team. So there's the mission, and there's the vision, which is the I kind of like, you have the outward, and then you have the inward, the vision, which is what you want it to look like inwardly. A worship team that is willing to be self-taught, a worship team that will help each other, that will disciple each other, that will be a tool and an asset for the ministers and the pastors and everything. Something that will help other students gain a heart and a passion for worship. And I had like a more listed out mission, a vision I wrote out a while back. So I have my mission, my vision, and then I have my goals, which is the small little victories I want to reach before I get there. And so my vision has not been reached yet. We're almost there, but we're not there yet. So goal number 1 was to make it a habit that we're doing worship every week. Goal number 2 was for them to be singing along. Goal number 3 was interest, to find that they have interest in helping. Goal number 4 was to have singers take my place. And goal number 5 was get more space so we can put more instruments. Goal number 6 was just to have kids that can actually play, and then it kind of just went from there. And then from there you have your process. So you have your vision, your mission, your goals, your process. Your process is how do you get from goal 1 to goal 2. And that's the thing that the goals and the process are things you must be willing to change. Like if you have this massive vision of, if a youth pastor is watching this and you have a vision of being of reaching every kid for the gospel in your neighborhood or something, and that is a good goal. That's a good vision. That's a good mission. I mean, the mission is the neighborhood. The mission is to reach them for Christ. Sometimes, and I would say sometimes, maybe even all the time, it is actually good to make it as outlandish as possible and start wishful thinking. Let's say your goal is that every single person in your area gives their life to Christ. Yeah. And the entire place finds conversion or something. Amazing. That's amazing. That's your mission. So your vision is, what do you want to see? Like, what do you think it will take? What program do you need to have? What does your church need to look like, for instance, for it to see that? Like, when you think about, if you close your eyes and you put yourself in that ideal scenario, what does your church look like? What does the program look like? And then after that, when you have that established, I'd recommend writing it down too. You establish and you spend a lot of time thinking about goals. How do we get there from here?
So everything that you just said, I work with companies and we use something called traction. If you are in a position, if you're in a place where you're trying to build out a goal, a vision, a goal, a process, that's a really great book, but you don't know where to start. Traction is a really great system. But this is what I would say to the point. If you have a vision, a mission, goals, but those goals, if you're thinking about like, okay, well, I need to get to here, and that still feels too big, it means you need to break the next goalpost down more. Yeah. Because sometimes we go like, oh, okay, well, I've broken it down to this, but this even still feels big. Cut it up some more.
Yeah, I mean, a goal, a great goal to have is to say that you started. And then I'd say the second goal after that is to do it consistently for a couple of days. Right. If your goal is to like, you can even apply that process to working out. Like if your mission is to be healthier, to provide for your family or whatever, and your vision is to look like Zac Efron.
In which movie though? Because like he was recently in a wrestler movie where he was like.
I'd say Baywatch. Oh. Yeah. Baywatch.
I mean, that's not my goal. I don't want to look like Zac Efron.
Yeah. But anyways, if that's what you want to. That's what you want to look like. Then you need to set goals, calculatable, reachable, smart goals. To get there. And whenever I started working out, my first goal was to work out at least once a week. And then after a few weeks, my new goal was to work out at least twice a week. Yeah. And then eventually it went from that to whenever I was actually built up to working out every day of the week. My goal is to optimize my workouts so that they're actually good. I'd argue that it's harder that it's better to have a bad workout but still be in the gym than to not work out at all. Right. Because it's a whole other thing.
Well, then too, like once you get the routine down, like what are ways you can improve the routine? Like your diet, that makes you more efficient.
Your sleep habits.
Yeah. So, but that you have to approach any ministry goal you have that way. You do. So it is important. You can't just. I'm not saying you can't have. I won't call it blind luck, but like God luck, just showing up, because that is a part of the battle. But if you truly want something that you can hand down to someone else, you've got to show up consistently with at least the bones and be willing to build it as you go.
Right. So as we go through like the different levels of planning and everything, I would say that when it comes to the student ministries, all of these visions and all these goals, all these things, they always start in my head. I don't want to say always, but at this point, I think most of the projects have. Although we're getting to
Yeah. No, like that was my. Oh yeah, almost all the projects start in your head.
Yeah, but then I have a process where I'll have my committee that I go to about some stuff, and then other stuff I'll go to. For like the different processes of planning to get this thing started. I have my committee I'd go to, my pastor, my adult leaders who are actually a part of the committee, but I separate them a little bit because they are out. They come every Wednesday and Sunday, and so they're more involved because half the committee is administrative, half of them is physically there. And then there's a time where I'll go to my student leadership, and so let's talk about the different levels of leadership that we'll go to and why we go to them for what part of planning.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's important to go to your student leaders because they're the ones who are a little closer to the heartbeat of what the rest of your students are going to want. Because we might think something is really great, and they're like, I don't know why you want to do that.
But I would say that's probably one of the final steps.
Yeah, that's just like what are the things we need to tweak to make it work with the students? I mean, it starts with, some of it, because you spearhead it, usually it goes like, it's a text message between either like you and me, or you might text me, Michelle, or Justin, or whoever, and get a feel out of, hey, what do you think about this? And so I would assume that you would take all of our opinions and go like, all right, what is this saying? And if there is a cohesive, collaborative yes, we then sit and talk about it. And then once we talk about something, we then post, if it's something that needs to be posted to the committee. And the committee, of course, if you're a Baptist, there's committees. There are committees for everything in the Baptist church. We have a youth committee, and it is comprised of some of the parents, different church members, finance team. That way we can come together and really...
All the Sunday school teachers in the youth room, not the church Sunday school teachers.
Everybody, all the leaders who are involved, and we flesh it out. Like, what does it really look like? What if it is a dream, not a goal? How do we eat the elephant? Like, what bite do we take first?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. It always starts with an idea, and to give you some background, this is not what I think everyone should do. This is what works for me personally. I have a document for everything that I do because that helps me focus. I have a Google Drive that has everything and even stuff that's never going to happen, because that's what helps me organize my thoughts. And the way it makes sense to me is it's an extension of my mind palace or whatever.
Yeah.
If I have an idea, I start by writing it on a spreadsheet that I have on that Google Doc for just ideas. And then it depends on when I get the idea. There have been times that I got an idea while I was with Emily, and she'd say something while we're on a date, and I'm like, hold on. And then I write it down, then I go back, right? Other times it'll be when I'm working on something else and I just can't really give myself the time to work on that. So I write it down, and then I have some moments of time throughout my days where I'm between projects or something, and then I'll open up my idea board to see if there's anything in there. And whenever I get something and I remember and I can see okay, well, this was just a bad idea, I'll throw that out. I don't like that. But if it's something like, oh yes, I like that, I'll pray about it, and then I'll actually put it make a document specifically for that, where I will write out my thoughts with no format.
Right.
Just
word vomit.
For word vomit, everything I think about that. And I'm at the point now where I even consider how that would affect every other aspect of it. And then I actually sit on it for a minute, for a few days, maybe a few weeks. And then I will text, I will usually start by texting my fiance and just see what she thinks about it. Then I'll text Nikki and Justin and Michelle and give their thoughts on it. And sometimes they'll bring it up to me in passing, or sometimes they'll just call me and talk about it. But after that, before I present it to anybody, I actually go to Pastor Reggie and I tell him about this. This is something I want to present. This is something I want to see happen. And I always preface it by saying something along the lines of, I wouldn't expect this to happen immediately, but this is something we're thinking about. Because at this point, the ministry's gotten so big that Pastor Reggie needs to be more involved. So,
yeah, I agree that, but you also, I think sometimes what's good about our core group is that we have the ability, we all have different abilities. And so one of the things that I think I'm able to do is, when you have a vision for something new, is I'm able to look at everybody who's involved and go, how do we get them on board? What do they need to see? Not in a manipulative way, but what steps would we have to take to make everybody excited about it? And those steps are usually not the same for each person. So in order for Pastor Reggie to be able to see this with clear eyes, what do we still have looming? What have we not done? What do we need to finish? What is still hanging over the youth group's head that we need to finish, bottle up so we can go? Because what you never want to hear from your ministry team or leaders, like your pastor, is, why would I give you the leverage or the rope to go do this when this hasn't been, like, what about this? So even if it's just giving report, these are where we are with all these things, this is what's next on the docket, we're not going to do this until we do this. Like framing it for everyone. So I do think that's important. It's something that you do well presenting it to the right people. I love that you go to the pastor. You should go to, that is just, you should, youth pastors and pastors should be hand in hand. Like there is.
Don't get me started on it. But there was a situation where a friend of mine, who's a youth pastor, did not communicate properly with his pastor, something that was small at the beginning. And that led to a legitimate problem that church had. And because of lack of communication, that just broke down to, he did not tell his pastor, his boss.
Right.
That there actually ended up being problems that leaked into our church.
Right.
And so, can I stress this enough? Talking to your pastor about your ideas will save your life. They are the ones that approve it, and they're the ones that have to answer to the general congregation about what you're doing.
Yeah, there are very few things, and if there are things, they're very, very small, that even we surprise each other with when we walk into these doors, when we do any kind of ministry. And if it is something that's okay, like Wednesday's a good example of this. You were giving announcements and you were letting them know, and we can actually talk about this maybe next week, or was about the costume contest that we're going to have at our fall party. And I wasn't aware of it, and you were like, yeah, I was just telling them about this. Do you want to tell them about it? And I was like, yeah, we're going to have this award, and this award. And it was all off the cuff. And those are the only types of things we would surprise each other with. We would never surprise each other with some kind of like, just something that the other one had to do that they didn't know about, or that puts them in a really bad spot, or that, we never drop bombs when it comes to ministry work.
Sometimes the ideas off the cuff are the best ones too.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we'll go to the pastor about stuff, and then whenever he's giving me his thoughts, his concerns, sometimes just throw it out and be like, okay, I guess it's not going to work. It's fine. I'm not emotionally attached to it. I'm going to get another idea. But sometimes he'll be like, cool, I like it, but here's my logistical problems with it or whatever. And then I'll sit on it. And then at this point, I will basically ask myself, like, is this something that I want to act on now, or is this something that I want to give to God and then wait for?
Right.
And so there's a bunch of ideas that I have that Brother Reggie knows about, and I have a document written out for it, and it's just sitting there because I know that God wants me to do it, but not currently. And I have a few of those. One of them was this podcast, by the way. I was thinking about this podcast for a while, but then it wasn't until recently I was like, you know what, I think we're ready to start.
Well, and it's obviously I can't speak to your communication with Justin and Michelle, but what I can speak to is our communication. When you will tell me an idea, like this podcast, for example, and I'll say, well, like, if it's going to take both of us, I'm not quite ready yet, or let's finish these things before we do this, or hey, I have this idea for such and such. Well, can we discuss that once we get through it, especially when we have big things like VBS. Like if you're trying to get an idea out of me during VBS, it's like, can I like finish this and then and so always making sure that we're keeping, but you do it for me too. So if I'm like, oh, I want to do this with the girls, you're like, well, we have this and this coming up, so let's hold off.
Yeah. I remember for the podcast, the thing that made me wait on it is the fact that I wanted to make sure we had an established media program. And what we have is, I wouldn't say like, it's not an extravagant, it's not a big media program, but it is one by definition. And I wanted to, there was a few projects that I wanted to start that I was waiting on the rebranding of this group to be done, basically. And that was something that I knew would naturally develop over time. And so I put all those projects in the background. One of them being the decoration of this room.
Yeah.
I was going to leave it blank until we got an idea of our our design and everything, and we finally started to see the brand that we wanted to build with this program. When actually, not with this. Actually, it started out whenever. Let me actually go get it. I know we can keep this on camera. It started out when we made contact cards for students to fill out like a profile, and they made and Nikki made this, and I like this, and I can see there's a color scheme for it. There's concepts. There's a font, and so we started making more things that look like this. And I should have grabbed the other stuff, but
contact cards, and we have
right, and then we have other stuff like words that kind of like the kids like the word cypress. They put the word cypress in a lot of stuff now, and long story as to why that's a thing. The angles, the colors, all that stuff, all that just developed. Mm-hmm. And whenever it finally had gotten to a place where we actually had a logo that came out of this from a girl that is exceptionally talented that put this together, that's how I knew that, okay, now that we have a brand, a color, and a vibe, we can start decorating, but we can actually start media, and we can start posting stuff, we can start making more merch. And that took a long time. This has been developing the whole year. And there's probably a lesson in that sometimes you have to let things develop naturally. Mm-hmm. But on the one hand, I think it's good to just start things off the bat. But on the other hand, there's some things that are done best whenever you actually allow it time and allow the foundation to really build itself before it starts.
Yeah, and I am not an anxious person when it comes to things like that. Like, mm-hmm. There are things I know that gotta do right mm-hmm. now, and there are things where I'm like, I can feel that whatever we're trying to do, it's not time yet. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things with our branding, we did use the cypress tree, and we used the cypress tree because more than a few years back, someone in the church decided they wanted us to update our logo. Like, we needed to modernize who we were. Mm-hmm. And they chose the cypress tree. And I remember back then, as someone who works with graphics and branding, and I know that, we're Tesh Baptist Church, right? So Tesh, Bayou. But that wasn't really our culture. It wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so while the logo, it looked great, it was a beautiful logo, it never quite felt like Tesh. Mm-hmm. And so our original logo back in it still is, but our original logo were just these three crosses. Kind of looks a lot like the wood of these crosses, slanted. And so, but at that point, the youth had adopted just the cypress tree with the Test Student Ministries.
And that's actually because of a shirt design that I thought of when I was hanging out with a friend, and I saw like a shirt that their youth group had. And then I was like, I could do that. And then it didn't. I'm not going to say that it looks good. I'm not going to say it looks bad. I'm going to say that it looks exactly like something that a very small youth ministry is led by somebody who doesn't know how to do graphic design, how their shirts would look.
Our shirts, but, I think it was Josh who took that and put it on like a black. The hoodies are one of my favorite things that we have, honestly. Mm-hmm. And
we have more of those.
But we had the cypress tree. Well, then it came down to, Tesh, I think our pastor started to see that we were starting to put together this brand uniformity, and he's like, I like that. So then we're like, well, we don't want the youth group to be completely separate from mm-hmm. the church. So this was what we told Isabella. Can you please think about a design that both incorporates the original logo, because mm-hmm. we want to get back to that, with the cypress.
Yeah.
And that is what she came up with. Every note that we gave her, she listened to when she'd come back. But the idea of that, the idea that the crosses were still built out of cypress, they look mm-hmm. a lot like our original logo. And honestly, I believe that this could probably be the main church logo at some point.
We have this that kind of came. I took the picture of the crosses. This was originally what she came up with, and then I put I basically made it look like a coat of arms or something like that, because I thought, honestly, I wanted to see how how this could look on a coffee mug.
Right.
That's me just being honest. And I was like, this actually is a really good look to it. And there's something about it that fits the vibe of this ministry that we wanted to reach, that I wanted to reach. And so I like that. And then from that, we were able to, we got the new student ministry logo right here. That, I mean, it's not on here, but I feel like it's on some of our posts. And then we have, let's see, some more stuff that we worked on, some concepts. This is actually an old one. I thought that I'd be able to find.
I mean, it took us a little bit to get from, because originally we were like, well, let's use a cypress tree, but let's break the limbs down of the cypress tree and make the shadows in the ground look like so. But we did eventually get to where we are. But that is, and you think about circles. If you don't have a brand social media person, but you want to start posting on social media, little touches like your profile picture being circular so that it always looks like it's meant to be
like
there.
It fits there, yeah.
Yeah, and so just little things like that.
I just noticed that that the other logo that I really like isn't on anything other than this picture, this thing that we use on Wednesday nights, our Let's Talk About It thing. But it's this logo right here.
Oh.
I really like this, and so it's really helped us to build the brand, and I think that's another thing. I think we're actually probably at the end right now, and so if I was to say there's like one of the takeaways that we could have is that it's good to have a plan and it's good to be structured, but there are some things that you want to just kind of let develop itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's why sometimes a vision and a mission is important, and even goalposts, but don't constrict the in-between. You have to let that breathe a little bit. I think that's a good lesson to have. And it wasn't that we wanted to speak about specific things that we do. We could have talked about the planning of YC or our Christmas play or agape or whatever it is. What's important is that we wanted to share what steps do we take? What does it look like? Who do we talk to? Our committee meetings can sometimes get a little, I would call it intense fellowship.
Heated.
Because we're all passionate about what we're doing here. And so really it's about, no matter what you're doing, it's about how do you want it to affect. Our branding, most people would go, who cares what your logo is? These kids care about the logo, believe it or not. They care about that they've had input. It starts with culture, right? We talked about that last week. Culture is very important, and a brand creates a culture. It just it does. It's the start of it for at least the external culture that you're trying to infect people with.
Yeah, and I think that your brand. Man, I mean, there's so many things we talked about today that could go into a greater topic, and so I'm just going to say that this podcast is a good example of the process, because this came from ideas that we had and we talked about, but now that it's actually in motion, this is the process of just letting it become its own thing and let it see how it is. And so, I'm not used to being on camera. Might be obvious to some people, I don't know, but we're getting there. And so we were talking earlier about how I plan on having this podcast go on for as long as it can, no matter how many viewers we get. And if we have low viewership at the beginning, let's do whatever we can to build a YouTube brand or to build more viewers and to get something out of this. Because I actually have a mission with this podcast, and I have a mission with our media program we're not even close to that. And I have a vision I want to reach.
But we only have so many hands and feet and bandwidth.
We may never reach it, but I think that it's good for us to start working towards that.
I do too. I think we could probably even do, we're calling this particular one Nuts and Bolts, which you already would have seen if you watched the opener. But we could also have a Nuts and Bolts part 2 where we talk about,
Electric Boogaloo.
But yeah, so I think we could probably go on just to kind of give anybody watching the insights to each one of the things the big events like YC, the Agape Dinner fundraisers, Christmas plays, all that kind of stuff.
I plan on having an episode for each of those, so we can talk about YEC for an entire day or that kind of stuff. So actually, to kind of close this out, There's nothing really big for announcements other than that we, at this point, would have paid for YAC, and we'll be ready to go. All 40 people would be signed up.
T-shirts ordered.
T-shirts are already ordered, so that's good. There's like a couple of people that we need to work with to see if they're going to be able to go or not. But there's going to be the costume contest that's happening in a couple of weeks. This is actually an example of an idea that I didn't have. This and also our gift wrapping fundraiser that we're going to do. Is an idea that I never had. And so I'm going to let Nikki kind of, if you don't want to explain it now, then eventually we can.
I mean, we can. I mean, it's coming up. I think it might be good for us. So the costume idea was there's this big furry ugly cloud around this time of year for churches, and we wanted, I know for me, if you take all the fun out of what you do as a Christian, instead of teaching people how to have fun as a Christian in those certain situations, you make it harder for people to want to follow. You're saying that's what churches tend to do. I thought you were saying that's what we do, and I was like, huh? No. I think churches tend to say Halloween bad, and there are aspects of Halloween that are bad, but they're also it's also kind of turned into a candy company holiday where we dress up and have fun. So can we teach our kids how to do that in a way that is appropriate? I think maybe closer to we'll record one for the Friday of Halloween that week.
That's next week, actually.
Yeah. And so we'll record it next week, and we'll talk about what are our viewpoints on it and how are we giving that to the kids. But the gift wrapping idea, which is a fundraiser, so we just had our Po' Boy fundraiser, big success. So I own a design business where we make, we sell decor to make wreaths and decorate Christmas trees and holiday seasonal decorating. But what I do every year is I provide a service where you can come to me and get your gifts wrapped. You just drop them off, I wrap them, you pick them up. And for 1 year, we put together toys for people so they could leave them there, pick them up the night of Christmas, And I thought this year, never proposed it before, we were just in a meeting for fundraisers, and I thought, well, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Where we do gift wrapping, and people can bring their gifts here, and that would be a way to raise some funds for the youth. And so we're going to be doing. We're going to start on Black Friday, and all the way up through Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, you'll be able to come pick up your gifts. If you have like doll houses or cars or whatever it is you need put together, you get a ticket, we put it together, you pick it up, and then gifts. It's just a way for us to get involved in the holiday and also do something for our church and our community. And that's a fun fundraiser, one that kind of stretches out a little bit.
Yeah.
Playing elves.
I want to do less fundraisers next year, or at least I want to do more fun stuff. Like I feel like the majority of the stuff we did this year was fundraising, and it was obviously we were very successful with it. But man, I want to give these kids some fun stuff to do. Well,
after the Po' Boy sale, I really didn't know that the gift wrapping fundraiser, because we were just still trying to catch up from the year before and also raise money for this year. I really didn't know that the gift wrapping fundraiser was necessary after the Po' Boy sale, because then we go straight into planning for Agape. And so is it necessary? I don't know. Maybe it's something we talk about being for the children's ministry, because they have not had any fundraisers this year. But ultimately, we have to spend money for the things that we do.
Yeah.
And because we want to do so much with these kids, that costs money. And some of us put our own money into the pot. Like if we're having the girls lock-in. We didn't spend any church money for that. We just bought everything ourselves, and
we don't plan on spending any money for D Now or Disciple U.
Yeah.
So that'll be good.
So anyway, I mean, we do these fundraisers for a reason, but some of it too is we try to at least make it fun. I mean, gift wrapping for some people, some of the guys, although I've never had any of the girls ask me to teach them how to make a bow. But I have how to make a boy. Golems. How to make a boy a bow. Now it's stuck there. How to make a bow. But I have had a group of boys ask me how to make a bow. That's a tongue twister. So anyway, yeah, I think you're right. We should hopefully next year not have to focus so hard on fundraising, but that is a fundraiser that is coming up. And then I would imagine some of the youth girls typically help me for our gingerbread party. I host a free event here at the church where families can come with their children and put together gingerbread houses. You know, the advertising is, if you've never put a gingerbread house together, because gingerbread houses are not expensive, but they're not cheap. And so we just on a Saturday, they all come up here, we put gingerbread houses together. It's a free event to take pictures and have a good time with other kids. So we try to do some holiday stuff for families to come together, and it's an outreach. So anyway, the youth help with that. The girls helped me with that last year.
Well, anyways, that actually that actually ends us off. I feel like we always have more to say, but that means we'll have more episodes to film. Nikki, you have any advice for the week?
Listen, just make really good choices, have steadfast faith, and love Jesus. And you? Any unhinged advice for us today?
I was about to say, don't dress like homeless people.
But Jesus did.
How do we know that?
We don't know that. You're right.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Good advice.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.